All right, yo, so what are people saying about Defenders of the Realm? What is the deal with this game? Well, without a doubt, you got to compare it to Pandemic, right? It's like I said in the beginning, it's kind of like Pandemic was the basis of the soup, and they added all the ingredients of fantasy and threw in the dice and all that kind of stuff. So what some people say is that because Pandemic doesn't have the dice element to it, they say that this is just, a game that is based on the dice, right? It's just based on random rolls, and whether you win or lose is based on the dice. Well, I definitely don't think that's true. Although you have to know going into this that it is a dicey game for sure. There is that random element to it. So it's not as deterministic as you might think. And Pandemic has cards that you flip over too. So that's there's a lot of random element in that too. Sometimes I feel like, and I'm talking about the base game of Pandemic, that and believe me, I love Pandemic. It's one of my most played games. I had a partner where we actually loved playing Pandemic together, just 2-player. Probably, except for Race for the Galaxy, that might be the game I've played the most, actually. I love it. But in that game also, sometimes I had the feeling like just the way the cards were stacked, I was probably going to lose the game no matter what, So it's not like there's no random element in Pandemic. There is more randomness in this, definitely more. So just know that going into it, if you're someone who wants something that without the random element of dice and flipping cards and stuff like that. But to say that whether you win or lose is based on the dice there's just no way. I mean, there's so many decisions to make in this game. And if you don't play together as a team and you don't try to win, you won't. A lot of people even say this game is too hard for them. It's just too hard to win. So don't think that it's just, it's just the dice that, messed me up or the dice, was in control of whether I was win or losing. No, you have to make some really intelligent decisions in this game. And there's a lot of decisions to make. It's something I really like about this game is that decision tree of this game for each player is in my sweet spot. It's not like too much. It's not overbearing, right? But the tree is wide and it's blossoming. It's just not too much. There's some games where it almost gets to be too much to me after a while. And I like deep games. I mean, I love Madeira. I like Vinhos, many Euro games that are very deep, very difficult. Not difficult, but very... just a sophisticated game with a lot of layers, very complex, right? This game isn't really like that. It's got this nice sort of feeling to it where there's a lot that you can do. And in the very beginning, it seems overwhelming. You have all these multi-use cards, and then there's dice, and the minions are doing something, all of them are doing something different. But after a while, you get, this is one of those games that you'll almost immediately know whether you like it or not. Put this game in front of somebody, tell them, how it works, and have them start moving around with their characters and killing stuff and figuring out. And to me, it only took like one turn, and I was like, oh my God, I love this game. I knew it was like Pandemic, but I was like, wow, I love the fantasy theme. I'm into fantasy. If you're into fantasy and you like Pandemic, you'll absolutely love this game. Another criticism is that for non-gamers, this game is no good, and Pandemic is kind of like what we call a gateway game. If you have your family come over and they don't normally play games and they want to play a game, Pandemic is good for that, and Defenders of the Realm isn't, because it's longer and there's more depth. And I would say that's true. I would say that's definitely true. This is definitely not a game for non-gamers that you just want to spring on someone. I mean, if they're into fantasy, if they really love Lord of the Rings, or if they're into maybe even Game of Thrones or something like that, and they're open to a board game, this might be a really good game, and they might end up really loving it, But just for, normal non-gamer, Muggle type people, I don't think, I think Pandemic is definitely a better fit. People a lot of times will say, oh, that's just a fantasy themed Pandemic. They'll just dismiss it just like that. And those are generally people who have never played Defenders of the Realm. If you play Defenders of the Realm, you usually don't say that, because once you play it, you realize, oh my gosh, yes, definitely Pandemic. You see Pandemic in it. It's recognizably from Pandemic, based on Pandemic, but there is so much more going on in this game. I mean, with the questing and the multi-use cards and the fact that all the minions do something different, the tainting of the land versus the generals moving into the center of the city. I mean, and with all the dice and it's very, very different than Pandemic, in my opinion. I mean, to dismiss it and just say, it's just fantasy pandemic is definitely not right. There's a lot going on in this game that's not pandemic-like, and it feels different. That's the important thing to me, right? Yes, it is recognizably from Pandemic, but the flavor and personality of this game is very different than Pandemic. And, people say that it is more chaotic than Pandemic, and that's definitely true. I would agree with that. There is an element of chaos in this when you add the randomness of the dice, but man, to me, it is just a stroke of brilliance to bring that into sort of like the Pandemic format, or some Pandemic mechanics are in this game, and to bring the fantasy theme and the randomness with the dice rolls to it is so great, because it's not just that, like what I've talked about before, that anticipatory awesome feeling right before you roll the dice. Are we going to get this? Are we going to kill this general? Oh my God, I got it, I didn't, and you look at the dice, and there's so much excitement. Tons of excitement brought with that. This game is really fun to play solo, but it's also really fun to play with other players, who are getting into the game, and you're hunched. It's one of those hunched over your seat kind of games, looking at the board, watching those rolls, But it's not just that. There's something about this game where you have to plan your moves, and it's really interesting because you're planning a move that might not work. In a more deterministic game, you might say, all right, well, in the beginning of your move, before you've even moved at all, you might say, well, I'm going to go there. I'm going to use these 3 actions to go there. I'm going to get rid of that, and then I'm going to go there and do this, In this game, you're more saying, I'm going to go there, and hopefully I'll be able to kill those minions. And if not, maybe I'll have to spend another action, but at the end, I kind of want to end up here, but I might not be able to. So in other words, you have to think on your feet. You are constantly engaged because you have to be nimble. You have to be an agile player because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if you're going to be able to kill that general. If you're even some quests that you go on in this game require a die roll. So you think, well, if I can do this quest, I'll do that. I'll get the reward and I'll be able to do this. If not, I'm going to be in trouble. I'm going to have to do this. So you're constantly having to think on the fly, and I think it's one of the things that's really magical about this game. No matter what happened with the graphic arts, I don't know what happened with the art direction. Maybe they sent it out and had to get it out the door too quick, or they didn't have their monitors fixed right to look at the proofs correctly or something. I don't know what happened, but they got some guy they hardly knew to do the graphic arts, or maybe their niece or something like that. Who knows? But I will say this, that it doesn't impinge upon the game whatsoever for me. I mean, don't think of it like, the one thing I say all the time is I hate it. I cannot stand it, and it's a pet peeve of mine when the artwork supersedes the functionality of the game, where, in a lot of games, the pieces don't fit in the particular spot they're supposed to go in, or, the artwork flows over onto a spot you're supposed to be able to see better, or the artwork is too small, or the cards are messed up, whatever. I don't like that. So, but I am obviously, if you watch my videos, I'm really into illustration and artwork. But so I just have to, be honest here, and I have to talk about the graphic arts and, how something I think went, horribly wrong here. But I'll just do a quick medley just to show you, and then I'll get back into it because I don't want to talk about it too much. Really terrible textures, like the ones around the regions. This one looks like it was made in Microsoft Word. The Any General die is the same color as the Varkalak die. Should have been a different color, like gray or brown or something like that, different color from any of the other dice. The regions that are on the quest cards do not make any mention of where they are on the map, and it is really, really hard to find stuff on the map. So what they should have done there is either point to a little map region of where it is, or that they at least could have changed the name of the place, like Dragon Teeth's Range here, could have been in the correct color font of the region. And if you say, well, they couldn't do that, it's actually done on this card right here. Pleasant Hill is a red location, for instance. Some of the bits don't really fit. Like this is the lifeline bit for the general right here. It's supposed to cover this on here, but it actually overlaps and it doesn't really fit. So that's why I use little markers like that instead. Much better. Also, these boxes with the numbers in them look like they were also made in Microsoft Word. This time maybe Word 1997. Terrible font choices. Poor lighting. Really garish colors. Charlie's Angel silhouette in a pretty purple background. What? Terrible font choices. Awkward poses. What is she doing there? Is she praying? She's she's a cleric. Maybe she's praying. Toothbrush speckle paint doesn't really look like anything in a terrain map. Really bizarre design choices, like this microscopically small red border around all the cards. Poorly illustrated map with really big expanses with not nearly enough detail in it, mixed with tiny places with way too much detail for the space. Really poor font choices, like where it says rewards there. That is really hard to see what that says. Anyway, it's just like poking a little bit of fun at the graphic design. But again, don't let it stand in your way of getting the game. It's a great game. It's really fun. If you want my opinion, I absolutely love this game. As I said, it's great to play solo. It's great to play with a bunch of players. Get a bunch of people who are into fantasy together. Bring out this game. It's easy to learn. It's immediately fun right from the get-go, and you're going to have a great time. I absolutely love Defenders of the Realm, yo!